April 16, 1945, 14,000 feet above the USS Laffey off Okinawa. Seaman Robert Johnson doesn't see the Zero until it's already committed. Diving at 340 miles per hour, engines screaming, a 500-pound bomb strapped beneath its fuselage. The pilot inside has written his farewell letters. This is a kamikaze. Johnson swings his 40-millimeter Bofors gun skyward. The barrel erupts, shells climbing toward the diving aircraft at 2,800 feet per second. He's been trained for this exact moment. Fire. Lead the target. Adjust. Fire again. 20 rounds scream upward. Every single one detonates too early or too late. The Zero punches through the exploding black clouds. The bomb releases. 3 seconds later, it tears through the Laffey's fantail. Metal shredding, flames erupting, men thrown into the Pacific. Johnson is still firing when the second kamikaze appears. Then a third, then a fourth, 6 in total, all diving. The problem is mathematical and brutal. A conventional anti-aircraft shell must strike within 30 feet of an aircraft to cause damage. That aircraft is moving at 300+ miles per hour. The shell's timed fuse is set before firing, an educated guess based on estimated altitude, speed, and trajectory. Get it wrong by half a second, miss by 400 feet. By early 1945, Japanese kamikaze tactics had evolved into something far more lethal than conventional bombing. Pilots no longer needed to escape. They were the guidance system. Diving angles exceeded 45 degrees. Speeds pushed aircraft to structural limits. Traditional AA fire required direct hits on targets, deliberately making themselves unpredictable through terminal maneuvers. The numbers told the story. Between October 1944 and March 1945, kamikazes sank 34 American ships and damaged 288 more. Destroyer picket lines, ships positioned to intercept kamikazes before they reached carriers, suffered catastrophic losses. USS Abil, sunk. USS Manert L. Abil, sunk. USS Callahan, sunk. Conventional A-fire success rate, 1.7%. Admiral Richmond Turner watched kamikazes overwhelm his radar picket destroyers off Okinawa and knew the invasion of Japan itself would be a slaughter. Each capital ship carried hundreds of AA guns firing thousands of shells per engagement. Nearly all missed. You couldn't train your way out of physics. You couldn't will a timed fuse to be accurate. Existing fuse technology offered 3 options: contact fuses that required direct impact, mechanical time fuses set manually before firing, and barometric fuses that detonated at specific altitudes. All 3 demanded impossible precision against maneuvering targets. A time fuse set for 8,000 feet was useless if the kamikaze jinked to 7,500 feet. Physics was unforgiving. The crisis extended beyond ships. Hundreds of American aircraft fell to Japanese AA fire using the same inadequate technology. In Europe, 8th Air Force bombers flew through fields of exploding flak, 88-millimeter shells with time fuses that turned the sky black, but hit less than 2% of aircraft passing through. Both sides faced the same problem. What American intelligence couldn't explain were isolated reports from late 1943 onward. Japanese pilots reported sudden, inexplicable explosions near their aircraft during attacks on U.S. naval forces. German Luftwaffe crews described American AA shells that seemed to know when aircraft were nearby. No impact required. No visible difference in the shells themselves. Just death closer than physics should allow. The answer was already at sea, classified at the highest level, embedded in shells being loaded into guns aboard destroyers, cruisers, and carriers. A device so secret that even the crews firing it didn't fully understand what made it work. And it had been designed not in a weapons lab, but by a team of civilian engineers. September 1940, Tizard Mission Briefing Room, Washington, D.C. British scientist Eddie Taffy lays a cavity magnetron on the table, a fist-sized copper device that would make radar small enough to fit inside an artillery shell. American physicist Merle Tuve stares at it and sees something the British don't: a proximity fuse that could revolutionize anti-aircraft warfare. Tuve runs Section T at the National Defense Research Committee. His team isn't military. They're physicists, electrical engineers, mathematicians pulled from universities. The concept is elegant. Put a miniature radio transmitter inside a shell. As it approaches a target, the reflected radio waves change frequency. When the frequency shift indicates proximity, 15 to 30 feet, detonate. Simple, theoretically. The engineering challenges are staggering. The fuse must survive being fired from a 5-inch gun, 20,000 times the force of gravity crushing it in microseconds. It must function while spinning at 500 rotations per second. It needs a power source that works after months in storage, and it must cost less than $20 per unit to be practical. Tuve gives his team 18 months. They work in a commandeered garage in Silver Spring, Maryland. Engineer James Van Allen, who will later discover Earth's radiation belts, designs the radio transmitter. It's smaller than a light bulb. The battery is a reserve design activated by the shell's spin. The vacuum tubes must be ruggedized beyond anything commercial electronics require. Every component is invented from scratch. August 1941, Dahlgren Proving Ground, Virginia. The first test shell fires from a 5-inch gun. It explodes, not near the target, in the barrel, killing the detonation prematurely. Second test, the vacuum tubes shatter from acceleration. Third test, the battery fails. Fourth test, the transmitter works, but the detonator doesn't. Tuve's team fires 600 test rounds before achieving one successful detonation. The breakthrough comes from failure analysis. They coat vacuum tube filaments in ceramics. They redesign the battery using technology from hearing aids. The transmitter frequency is set to 200 megahertz, high enough for precision, low enough to be reliable. By January 1942, success rate climbs to 50%. By May, 85%. The fuse, designated VT for variable time to hide its true nature, enters production. Security is absolute. Manufacturing happens in 3 separate facilities. Workers assembling components don't know what the device does. Even the name is misdirection. Variable time implies another mechanical timer, not revolutionary radio technology. Fuses are shipped in sealed containers. Duds must be recovered from the ocean to prevent enemy examination. The penalty for a security breach, treason charges. January 5th, 1943. USS Helena, South Pacific. 5-inch gun crews load shells marked with yellow bands, the VT fuse identifier. They've been told only that these are special ammunition to be used exclusively against aircraft, never against shore targets where duds might be recovered. Fire control radar locks onto an incoming Japanese bomber at 12,000 yards. The Helena's Mount 52 opens fire. Shells climb toward the bomber in a climbing arc. At 8,000 feet, 75 feet from the aircraft's fuselage, the first VT round detonates. Shrapnel sleeves the bomber. The second round explodes 40 feet away. The aircraft disintegrates. No direct hit required. The engagement lasts 11 seconds. The gun crew stares, uncomprehending, at what just happened. Word spreads through the Pacific Fleet in coded messages. Effectiveness rates against aircraft climb from 1.7% to 9%, a 500% improvement overnight. But Admiral King restricts VT use to naval engagements only, never over land where dud shells might fall into enemy hands. The Japanese cannot know this technology exists. Not yet. Not until American production makes it impossible to lose. By late 1944, American factories produce 40,000 VT fuses daily. They're loaded into 5-inch naval shells, 90mm Army anti-aircraft rounds, even artillery shells for the Battle of the Bulge, where a single American artillery battalion fires 10,000 VT rounds, stopping a German armored assault by detonating shells above infantry in the open. The technology has matured from experimental to decisive. April 16th, 1945. Same day, same ship, USS Laffey off Okinawa. But now the yellow-banded shells are loaded in every ready rack. Fire Control Officer Lieutenant Frank Manson watches 6 kamikazes commit to their dives. He doesn't adjust fuse settings. The VT rounds will decide their own detonation point. He orders, commence firing. Mount 51 erupts. 5-inch shells scream upward at the lead zero. At 800 feet from the aircraft, the first round's transmitter detects the reflected radio signal. Frequency shift confirms proximity. The detonator fires. The shell explodes into 1,200 steel fragments, traveling 4,000 feet per second. The Zero's wing shears off. The aircraft cartwheels into the sea. The second kamikaze enters its terminal dive. Gun crews don't lead the target perfectly. They don't need to. 3 VT rounds detonate within 60 feet of the aircraft. Shrapnel punctures the fuel tank, severs control cables, kills the pilot. The Zero drops uncontrolled, missing the Laffey by 40 yards. Third kamikaze, destroyed at 1,200 feet. Fourth at 900 feet. 2 kamikazes break through. One strikes the Laffey's aft gun mount. The hit Johnson witnessed earlier. But 4 destroyed out of 6 is a 67% kill rate. 6 months earlier, conventional fuses would have killed 1, maybe 2. The Laffey survives 22 kamikaze attacks that day. She earns the nickname, the ship that would not die. Across the Okinawa radar picket line, the mathematics of aerial warfare inverts. USS Cassine Young, 12 kamikaze attacks, 9 destroyed by VT-fused AA fire. USS Purdy, 6 attacks, 5 destroyed. USS English, 8 attacks, 7 destroyed. Japanese pilots report to their commanders that American shells now explode as if guided by demons, detonating precisely when aircraft are most vulnerable in their final dive. Japanese intelligence operates in desperate confusion. Captured American shells are examined. They find radio components but can't replicate the ruggedization, the frequency calibration, the split-second timing. Tokyo assumes the devices require complex ground-based radar guidance. They don't understand each shell is autonomous, a miniature robot making its own kill decision in microseconds. German intelligence faces the same mystery. Luftwaffe crews report concentrated AA fire over the channel, becoming catastrophically effective in late 1944. Technical analysis of recovered shell fragments shows vacuum tubes, radio equipment. But German industry cannot manufacture tubes that survive gunfiring. They assume it's propaganda, that American gunnery training has simply improved. They're wrong. By May 1945, American factories have produced over 22 million VT fuses, their standard issue across the Pacific Fleet. Kamikaze effectiveness drops from 14% of sorties achieving hits to less than 3%. The invasion of Japan, projected to require 500,000 American casualties, becomes feasible because troop ships can now survive the kamikaze gauntlet. The fuse doesn't end the war, but it makes ending it survivable. The technology remains classified until 1950. When the patents are finally published, Soviet engineers realize they've been trying to replicate a device they fundamentally misunderstood. The VT fuse isn't just a better timer, it's a paradigm shift. It turns every anti-aircraft shell into a weapon that makes its own tactical decision about when to kill. Merle Tuve never receives public recognition during his lifetime. James Van Allen becomes famous for space exploration, not weapons design. The engineers who solved the impossible problem of putting a radio inside an artillery shell return to universities, to civilian life, to obscurity. The garage in Silver Spring becomes a parking lot. The weapons they created remain in service, refined, miniaturized, digitized into the 21st century. Robert Johnson survives the war. He stands on the Laffey's deck in 1946 as she sails into port, still scarred from kamikaze hits, but afloat. He never knows the technical details of the yellow-banded shells that saved his life. He doesn't need to. He knows only that in April 1945, the rules of aerial warfare changed. Shells that missed still killed. And missing, it turned out, was close enough.